Good evening, experienced students. I hope you're keeping well and having a wonderful week so far. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me this evening. I would just like to request that you record your attendance in the meeting chat by typing your name, your surname, and your student number in the meeting chat before we start class. I'll give you a few moments to do that before we officially start. Okay, so thank you for those who have recorded your attendance, and thank you to everyone who sent me their CVs during the course of the week. In the connection really made some general notes about the CVs that I have some really amazing ones and some with a lot of. There's some areas that we can definitely improve on, and that's what we're definitely going to be looking at. We're going to be looking at areas of improvement. But all in all, most of you had the basic idea of a CV and really some really nice CVs that came out. So I really enjoyed having a look at those. So just some admin I want to remind you of. Remember the workshops are taking place next week on Science and Campus. Your workshop is on Monday, this Monday of March at 12 until 12:30. So it's a 2-hour workshop. I have shared the information with you on the group. That's obviously for the full-time students, and then for the part-time students, we will then have a workshop next week, Thursday at 5:30, for the part-time students, because part-time students also requested a workshop. I just want to make sure, can everyone hear me? I see someone saying that the audio is quite soft. I will try my best and speak as loud as I possibly can. Okay, so firstly, you need to take note of is that the workshop is taking place next week. It's a 2-hour workshop. Your attendance will be really appreciated. So I really advise that you come and attend the workshop next week. I will be taking your attendance. There's really a good opportunity for you to get to meet me and for me to get to meet you, and for us to really engage with content on a face-to-face basis, and also just get to know each other a little bit better. And what we're going to be doing next week during the workshop, we're going to talk about the practice in more detail, because it will be the first time where we have a lot more time with each other. So we'll definitely be using this as a really great opportunity for us to interact with each other for a nice 2-hour period. We will speak about the practicum in length, and then we'll go through some of the course content that we have covered and thus far, including the work that we'll be covering next week. So that's for the workshop. So if you can attend, please attend. I really advise that you attend. The everyone says the audio keeps breaking up. Let me just have a look. The weather isn't the best this side. There is lightning where I am, so it could be the lightning. But I'm going to try my best. I have full internet connection, so that shouldn't be the problem. But let's go on. It is recorded. We will go through this again in our workshop next week. So whatever you miss now, if the audio cuts out, I am recording this. I'm just really having a problem uploading the Zoom meetings to Core Campus. Allowing me to do that. So we're going to have to try and find another way for me to share the Zoom meetings recording with you. If anyone has a great idea in which I can share it with you, please let me know. I don't know if you all have access to OneDrive. That might be an alternative way in which I can share the OneDrive Zoom meeting recordings with you, just because Core Campus is not allowing me to upload them. It's just taking too long to upload, and therefore it bombs out. Okay, there's an app called Collect. Okay, let me have a look at that. I'm going to take a note of Collect, and let me have a look and see. I'm open to any suggestions. So there's a way you can upload and download videos on the app. Okay, thanks, May. I'm definitely going to go look at the Collect app and have a look. So it's fine. I have the videos on my side. It's just obviously for me to get you to access them. So let me do a little bit of research into the Collect app and see if that's possible, if I can share with you on the app. Obviously the videos are a lot too big for you to share on WhatsApp, so I'll have to look at another option, or we can maybe do a Google Drive or something along those lines. I'll explore that a bit, but I'm definitely open to suggestions along that. But if it's breaking up, I do apologize. The weather's not the best on my side. There's a lot of lightning, but I am on fiber, so it shouldn't be necessarily the problem. But just bear with me for today. I will rehash today's class in the workshop next week. So just if you're scared that you're going to be missing anything out. But what are we going to do today? So for everyone that joined us a bit late, please record your attendance in the meeting chat for me. And what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be looking at lesson 3 specifically, that focuses on how to write a proper professional CV. And I'm going to give you some generic feedback on the CVs that you've sent me. We're going to look at areas of improvement, and what you're then going to do for your workshop next week is you're going to improve your CV and then bring it to the workshop next week. And then we're going to have a look at your CVs once again. So this was now a nice draft exercise, but for next week, you're going to improve the CV that you already have. So it's great that you have already done the groundwork for the CV. Now we're going to work on improving it. So I see with your CV, some of you use quite a big variation. Some of you use Canva, some of you use some Word templates, and some of you just use a simple Word document. All good and well. I really advise that you use Canva. Canva has a really great variety of templates that you can use in order to construct your CV. So I will definitely advise that you go use Canva. Canva is completely a free app that you can use. I'm going to share my screen with you so that we can have a look at Canva together, just so that you can see what we're looking at. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen with you, and you'll see the screen that I'm sharing is the Canva website. So you'll see if you go onto Canva, this is what Canva looks like. Now, Canva is a really great app. You can make social media posts, you can do flyers, you can do logos, you can do posters, you can do Instagram posts, Facebook posts, videos, presentations. I mean, everything you can do. It's pretty much, especially if you're in the space that you're in. Canva is great, and most of the stuff on Canva is for free. If you want, obviously, there are some templates that you have to pay for, but most of them are free. So what I want you to do for next week is take your CV that you have sent me and go and put it on a Canva template that matches, obviously, also speaks to you. So you're going to go into Canva, and obviously, remember, Canva is an American website. So in America, they don't call it CV, they call it resume. So you're going to have to search resume. Let's search resume, and you'll see the examples that you get for resumes. Okay, they have really great designs. So let's look at some professional resumes that you get. So look at this, and you can download it, and it is actually an entire template. So you can have a look at all these, and you can choose a template that obviously speaks to you. You'll see lots of CVs, currently resumes, otherwise known as, have a photo of that person. Now, a photo is something really nice to add to your CV because it makes it a little bit more personalized, but it's important that when you add a photo, that the photo is professional. It can't be a selfie or you in your pajamas or your pool lazy Sunday. It really has to be a professional photo. So take a nice photo, make sure it's professional, have a smile, because it really shows the person that sees your CV who you are, what you look like, and it kind of speaks a bit about your body language. A photo says a million words. So I would advise that you put a photo of yourself. Now, if you go into Canva, there are multiple and thousands of resume templates. I've just chosen the specific professional resume, and you can go through them. So that's, for example, one design. There's another design. This guy, they're both software developers. This person is an IT project manager, but obviously it's just the layout that's going to be like this. You can obviously going to adapt this to suit obviously your skills, your personal profile, your work experience, your education history, and the like. Okay, so you'll see that all look a little bit different. Here's one for a graphic designer. Here's one for a software developer. These are all very much generic ones. So for you to have a look at it, they're all a little bit different. So you kind of need to find which one you like, and then you can choose that one. There's also a lot in the professional space. So you'll see if we go back, this card changes. If we type in resumes again, you'll see there are multiple types of resumes that templates that are available on Canva specifically. So let's say resumes again. And you will see on the side, obviously in the first one, we just chose professional resume, but you can do a modern resume, you can do a simple resume. There's an infographic one, minimalist, corporate, creative. If you want to go into the creative space, that's pretty cool. A photo resume for those who are photographers, colorful resumes, acting resumes, academic resumes, graphic design resumes. So it all depends, obviously, in which industry you're in. So the professional ones are great, the business ones are great, but if you're in the creative space and you really want to look at some creative resumes, these are also really great ones to have a look at. Like that looks quite nice and clean. So you're more than welcome. This is also a really nice resume, or CV on the other hand, really nice layout. So what you need to do for next week is go on Canva and transfer your CV onto Canva, choosing one of these templates of your liking. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions that they would like to ask with regards to Canva and what you need to do? So what you need to do is you need to take your CV, transfer it onto a Canva template if you haven't yet done so, because some people did use Canva now. So if you haven't used Canva, go and transfer your CV to Canva. You need to print out your CV and bring it to class to our workshop next week, i.e. pretty much the same thing. Okay. Does anyone have any questions about this before we start with the lecture for today? Okay, I assume silence is golden. I will also remind you on the WhatsApp group just so that you're aware of what you need to do for the workshop next week. That's a bit of a homework that you need to do for next week. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen. We're going to start then with the lecture for today's class specifically. I did share the slides with you during the course of the week, and they are also available on full campus. So what we're going to be doing today is looking at lesson 3. Now, lesson 3 is really, we continue to prepare for the practicum, but this lesson specifically focuses on a CV, or otherwise known as a curriculum vitae, and what should be on your CV and what is a CV. Now, a CV is such an important document that you are going to use throughout the course of your life to look for employment. And this is really the first step in taking the step to seek experiential learning, because you ultimately have to represent your CV when you are seeking experiential learning opportunity at an organization. So what are the lesson objectives for today's lecture specifically? We need to understand the expectations of the student, which is either the individual versus the organization, understand the importance of first impressions. So we're going to do a bit of a recap on first impressions, and then we're going to be looking at how do we prepare a CV and how do we prepare for a job interview specifically. So let's do a bit of a recap on how do we make a good first impression. Last week's class was specifically dedicated towards how to create a good first impression. Now there are some tips to create a good first impression. This is super important, especially when you're going for an interview. It's important that you are enthusiastic, you show respect, you are open to new ideas, always remain positive. You realize that it's not all about you, so don't only talk about yourself. Try to avoid the bad days, even if you're having a terrible morning, or you were stuck in traffic, or you spilled coffee on you. Like, you need to ignore that and focus on the interview itself, and pay attention to your body language, because body language speaks volumes. So those are some of the tips. Some other tips is it's important to know what to wear for the interview. So you need to dress for the environment, be well-mannered and have a positive attitude, relax and build up some confidence, treat everyone with equal courtesy. Body language is vital. It's important to make eye contact, be clear about what you want and what you're asking, and show interest in what you're being asked. So those are some great tips about making a good first impression. But today's class is really about a curriculum vitae, otherwise known as a CV. Now, curriculum vitae is otherwise known as course of life. And everyone in their life is definitely going to have a CV sometime in their life, or otherwise known as a resume. A CV is a first impression on a paper. So remember, like we said, that we now know how to make a good first impression in person, and that's when you go to the interview. But a CV is really an opportunity to make a good first impression on paper. And that's why I feel it's so important to have a photo of yourself. It really speaks a lot about who you are and what you look like. So that's why it's important to be very professional. Spelling errors, the way you do it, everything speaks about who you are. It's important that it is a really good document. It's together, it's professional. There are no grammar, spelling errors. It follows a specific order, because people are judging you on your CV. So that's important. What is important is that you stand out. Okay, so you can see we had all the pen now. You need to stand out. Remember, employers are looking at hundreds and hundreds of CVs, and what makes yours stand out? Often it's just using a really nice professional template. It's using a nice Canva template versus using a black and white Word document. That is often the difference of standing out in a crowd of applications. Small things like that. Having a photo on your CV also allows you to stand out. So those are small things that you need to take note of when you are providing your CV. But remember, don't go overboard, okay? You don't want to be the nuclear bomb. You don't want to put in your whole life's work. It mustn't be too colorful. You don't want pictures of your dogs and your family. That's all too much, okay? So you want to stand out from the crowd, but you don't want to go overboard. It's important that your CV is no longer than 2 pages. Your CV is absolutely more than enough. You shouldn't need more than 2 pages for your CV. So let's look at CV. So it's important to note that first impressions count, just as like what we spoke about last week. You have at least 30 seconds to make a good first impression, especially when it comes to your CV. Now, I have sat in many interviews. I have looked at many CVs and job applications. Within the first 30 seconds of me looking at a CV, I know whether this candidate is worthy of an interview or this candidate is not worthy of an interview or is ill-suited for the job. So that's why it's important that your CV speaks volumes. Remember, there are no second chances. Your letter of application and your CV are all a company has to judge you by, and therefore they see witness to your talents. And therefore, it's important that your CV always accompanies a letter of application. But we'll look at a little bit more of that next week in the workshop. So you don't need to worry about a letter of application just yet. So it's important that your CV is impressive, it's objective, and it's truthful. You can't say there that you can speak French, but you don't know one word of French, okay? So it has to be super truthful. And remember, you need to present yourself in a good light without sounding too egotistical. And that's super important for you to note. So what is a CV inherently? A CV is a Latin phrase that is translated into the course of one's life, and it refers to a document that provides a short account of the person's education, skills, and professional experience typically prepared for a job application. And it is used to introduce you to a potential employer. A CV may be used in other relevant information, such as a list of awards, references, details of professional memberships or professional organization, and a brief summary of interest and your involvement in any community work if you have done any community work. So that's important, but we'll look at the structure as we go along. So what is the purpose of a CV? Firstly, is to supply your potential employer with relevant information about your background and your abilities. It is to highlight the attributes that make you feel well suited for the position you are applying for, and it is therefore also used to entice employers to invite you to the interview, because that's ultimately what you want. You want to bag the interview. If your CV is selling you short, you're not going to bag the interview. So therefore, it is super important. So what makes a strong CV? What makes a CV amazing? What will entice employers to invite you for an interview? So there are a couple of things that makes a strong CV. Firstly, information that is displayed clearly, concisely, and without errors that is easy to read. So mustn't be too much, mustn't be too lengthy, must get straight to the point. You don't want these long paragraphs, you don't want spelling errors or grammar errors. You don't want to be looking for information. That's the first thing. Secondly, a tailored approach that customizes the CV for the position in question. And therefore, it's important to note, although we all have a generic CV, we always will update or tweak our CV for the position that we are applying for. Because each position requires a specific group of skills. And in our CV, we want to highlight those skills that make us well suited for the job that we've applied for. So it's important that we tailor our CV for the position that we've applied for. You really want to exclude any unnecessary information, embellishments. You don't want to have too many borders or too many pictures. All of that should be a no-no. You want to use formal register with correct spelling and grammar. So that is super important. The language that you're using, is it written concise? Is it clear? Is it without any spelling or grammar errors? And you'll see how many CVs have grammar errors, because what happens is that I write my own CV. I proofread my CV, but I don't pick up my own mistakes because I know what it's supposed to say. So it's always good to get someone else to just have a look and proofread your CV, because we are humans and we don't always pick up our own mistakes. So it's important that you have a look at that specifically. So now that we know what makes a strong CV, what should not be included in the CV? So what information can you really leave out of the CV? So this is the information that you don't want to include in your CV. Firstly, you don't want to include any incorrect information. So for example, you don't want to include an incorrect cell phone number that no longer works, or an incorrect email address that no longer works, okay? Or you don't want to include that you can speak French, but actually can't speak French at all. Secondly, you don't want to include any private or sensitive information. You don't want to tell the person that you maybe have some medical condition that you suffer with. So any private or sensitive information does not have to be included in your CV. You also don't want to include any irrelevant information that doesn't match the job that you're applying for. So if you're applying for a job that is maybe a dog walker, it would maybe be important to say that you love dogs. But if you're applying for a job to be a graphic designer, it is not necessarily important to say that you love dogs, because it's not really fit for the position. So that's super important. Secondly, you don't details, and I've seen that in some CVs. Some people put 2 different numbers and 2 different email addresses. That is too much. You need to give one reliable contact number and one reliable email address. You don't want to give the prospective employer too many options. They wouldn't know on which number to call you or on which number to email you. So it's super important that you take notes of that specifically. Okay. You also want to you don't want to use any jargon or slang that the prospective employee might not know. Okay, so you want to make sure that you're sticking to perfect English. Just on a side note, before I carry on, I see we only have 10 minutes left of our class. So I'm assuming some of you joined a little bit early. Remember, like I said to you before, please only join 2 to 3 minutes early on maximum. If you join 10 minutes early, it's cutting into our lecturing time. So now instead of 40 minutes, we only have 30 minutes today. So I'm going to rush a bit, but I will rehash this content in our workshop next week. Okay, so now that we know what is not included in our CV, what should be in our CV? So we always want a summarization of the salient points. You always want to start off with some personal information. This includes your name, your surname, your ID number, your cell phone number, your residential address, the languages that you can speak. Many of you have your personal information spot on the CVs that you've sent me. Your personal information must then follow your formal qualifications or your education. Now, it's important here that you need to follow it in reverse chronological order. So you want to start with the most recent to the last. Most of you have started with your high school and then went on to your Boston qualification. You need to flip it around. Your Boston qualification must be first and your matric qualification must be last. So in reverse chronological order. Following that should come your employment experience. Once again, in reverse chronological order, the most recent should be first. Okay, so you need to obviously include at first, what should appear first under your employment history is the current job or your most recent job, then following on. And then you can include some general information such as the skills you might have or your interests, and then a few references that you will require. Okay, just for the sake of time, I'm just going to go over it quick, so just have a look at this yourself, but we will rehash it in the workshop just for the sake of time. And these are the information categories. You can see, for example, under each information category, I've indicated specifically what you need, what is the type of information you need to include under each category. You'll see with personal information, it's your name, surname, ID, passport number, contact details, residential and postal addresses, age, date of birth, home language, additional languages, and driver's license, and so on and so forth. So you can just work through that. So make sure that when you're doing your CV in Canva, you have ticked all the boxes of this is the type of information you have under each heading. And it's super important that you have headings in your CV because it creates great structure. So what about the format? As I said to you, it needs to be in reverse chronological order when it specifically comes to your education and your employment history. Use headings and subheadings because obviously it creates order, and give the most recent information first, and that ultimately we are referring to reverse chronological order. So remember, a CV must be relevant, truthful, and concise. And I find this picture very apt because the person is looking at the CV and the lady is sitting in front of him, and you can see that the lady in the photo represents the lady sitting in front of him. So therefore, it must be relevant for the position that you apply for, and must obviously contain truthful information and be very concise. You don't want to put a picture there of what you looked like 10 years ago. Now you're going for a job interview and the picture no longer matches so well. So make sure you keep it up to date and relevant all the time. And the CV should be updated at least every 6 months to a year, depending on your movement in your educational space or your employment environment. So let's look at some examples of great CVs and some examples of some bad CVs. This is a really bad CV, okay? The font is really not professional at all. You'll see his email address is very unprofessional, and that's the one thing you need to know. Prospective employees are going to use your email, so therefore it's important to have a very professional email that you add to your CV. So if you don't have a professional email address, start or create one today. You'll see mine is, for example, charlene.barnard@outlook.com. Very professional, okay? Why is this guy's CV bad? Because firstly, his email address is coolguy007@hotmail, okay, .co.uk, i.e. no, like, I'm glad you think you're cool, but we don't really think you're cool, okay? Date of birth, he doesn't have to put date of birth. We all assume that it's his date of birth. He could have added some additional information specifically to his personal information. He doesn't really have the best headings. And firstly, this section here that says, I'm a hardworking individual who enjoys working. That kind of says the same thing. If you're hardworking, I assume that you enjoy working. Okay, I'm excellent at meeting deadlines, a little bit of an oversell there. I have 2 years of experience in business. What type of business? And I would like to contribute to a business with my excellent skills and work experience. Okay, what type of business? What type of skills? He's being super vague. Also, this introductory paragraph should be first, and then it should be followed by his information. His achievements, he's saying he finished my college studies. What college studies did he do? At which college, from which years, and what qualification? And he's saying now he's currently working in IT support assistance, like which company, what are the roles, who are you reporting to, when did you start there, what is the company's name? So there are really some things that he could have included here. His education also is in the wrong chronological order. He should have started with Sandwell Sixth Form College first and then worked his way down. It is not necessary to include your primary school and your nursery school. Please omit that. You can literally, the last education that should reflect there is the fact that you have matriculated, the school that you've matriculated from, and the year. It is not even necessary to indicate the subjects that you matriculated with and the marks you got into those subjects. It's important that you just say there, matriculated from this high school this year. You can also see that he is ultimately busy with a BSc in psychology. He has also put that last. So it's important that he does it in reverse chronological order. That's why it is an example of a very bad CV. Here are some good examples of CVs. This one is very basic, but really has some nice headings. It has a nice professional profile, really nice professional email address, some of its achievements, looking obviously at the most recent, so it follows reverse chronological order. So this is an example of a good CV. The examples that follows are also some examples of nice CVs that I have found from the web, many of them using Canva. So this is another one, James Smith. You can see here, once again, quite a nice CV. When it comes to his personal information, he's used little icons, so that's quite nice as well. I would definitely recommend that. Hobbies and interests aren't really that important. I wouldn't really include that in the CV from my personal perspective. There's another one. He has Alan Adam. He's a media specialist. You see his skills. He's rated himself and his skills. If you are in the creative space, it is nice to put in all your social media, but make sure that your social media represents your work portfolio. It is not you and your friends on a Sunday night at a nightclub having a good time, okay? So only include your social media handles if it's a direct portfolio of the work that you've done. So if you're a photographer and you have an Instagram page for your photography, then include your Instagram handle. Otherwise, don't do that. Okay. I'm going to skip over these examples just because we only have less than 1 minute left. So I'm just going to skip over those, but you can look at the other great examples that I have included here for you, all using Canva. Please go watch the video on YouTube on how to make a good first impression in an interview. This is super important. You also need to go watch the video about how to answer tell me about yourself question. We will look at that specifically next week in our workshop. I'll dedicate more time to that because of the fact that we are running out of time today. So have a look at that video. The information is directly extracted from that video. So we'll have a look at this in more detail next week. And please contribute to the discussion on Call Campus by telling me, after watching this video about tell me about yourself, how do you answer tell me about yourself question? Please answer and contribute to the discussion on Call Campus and tell me, how do you approach it? Tell me about yourself question in an interview. And also, please provide in your Call Campus discussion, contribute by providing 5 tips for preparing for a job interview. Okay, so what are we going to be doing next week? And what do you need to prepare for your next lesson? You need to read chapter 1. We're going to be doing a reflection activity. You need to create your own definition of a skill and reference sources and the definition thereof. From the listing table one of the textbook, choose the attributes and research them. We'll do that more in the workshop next week. Identify skills that are most accessible to an essential manager. We'll also do that next week. And bring a definition of the word skill to the workshop. So for your workshop next week, you need to put your CV on Canva and print it out and bring it to class. And you need to bring a definition of the word skill to class and reference that definition. Okay, sure. That was a very quick class that I had to